Alright guys, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome back, friends and fiends. We're going to jump in and talk about a couple of things that I picked up on Free RPG Day just recently. If you didn't know, Free RPG Day happened, so if you missed it, add it to the calendar for next year, because it's a great way to check out a whole bunch of different stuff that's kind of going on, especially you get to look at some stuff that's not D&D and not Pathfinder and not like Call of Cthulhu, kind of those big names. I mean, Pathfinder, there's stuff for Pathfinder there. I shouldn't say that. Paizo always does stuff for it, but usually not D&D, and Call of Cthulhu usually not. I mean, Chaosium does, and they're the people who put out. I'm getting in the weeds. That's all you need to know. Chaosium is there. Paizo is there. Wizards of the Coast is almost always absent. WizKids is usually there to give off like a mini or two, but that's it. So no D&D stuff, but Pathfinder stuff, sometimes Call of Cthulhu stuff, and a lot of other people who are trying to compete in that space. So it's a great way to get a bunch of exposure really easily for $0 to some other TTRPG systems and settings and supplements and things like that. So I thought we'd jump in and take a look at two very specific ones that I pulled up. I thought we could sit down and we could look at all of them, all the different ones that I've picked up all in once. We've done that before in previous years. So I'm like, maybe I'll pick like a few here and there that kind of talk a little bit more about them in depth, which is not something I've done. And so I picked two to start off with. We're going to start off with No Place Like Home Brew with their little free supplement, and Dungeons Kittens. That's what we're gonna start off with. Me stuff up and get to it. Mainly gonna be a talking head video, but can go ahead and pull this over here. There we go. So let's go ahead and I have not set up workspace. Let's look at the workspace real quick, just so that way we can get a look at what's happening over here. There we go. So Free RPG Day was on June 27th. Now, if you're in the UK, apparently it hasn't happened yet. US Customs hold no surprises there as to kind of what's going on in our country, and international commerce makes things difficult. But yeah, we're looking at stuff that I had access to because I'm in the US. We've got a few different ones, but let's go ahead and drop down here, and we're going to look at, let's look at No Place Like Home Brew, and that's by Roll and Press Games down here. You can get the tagline here. No Place Like Home Brew sampler gives you ready-to-use settlements, factions, NPCs, and more for your fantasy TTRPG games, designed to slot seamlessly into your campaigns, makes building a living, breathing fantasy world easier than ever. So, we talked about this when I was doing a little bit of preview of some of the stuff that was going to come out, when I was taking a look at, what is things that might be interesting to me that maybe want to pick up. And this, of course, jumped out at me. And when I was looking at it, and I was like, some of this seems really familiar, like the artwork and layout kind of seems very familiar to me. And we figured out because that they put something out last year for Free RPG Day, which was One Shot Wonders, which I also picked up and talked about a little bit. And it's got a very similar kind of layout and color scheme, very similar design, for obvious reasons, put out by the same people. So let's talk a little bit about the specifics. Now, most of these things, I have the physical copies, so that's what we're going to be looking at, because I don't have the digital copies yet. Some of them are up, some of them are not yet for many of these things. What you can do is most publishers, when they do Free RPG Day, will put up a free download of the PDF if you didn't get a physical copy. So you will have to go to the publisher, and you can probably find it either there or through DriveThruRPG or somewhere else. You might have to sign up for a mailing list or something of that nature, and you can get a little bit of it. But here's kind of what it looks like on the inside. Very kind of... There is this lovely dragon illustration. Really beautiful. That is the Under King. Got a bunch of dragons in here. Alright, so let's talk. I'm going to put this down in front of me, flip through it a little bit, and talk a little bit about, what I was expecting, why I decided to pick it up, and then my thoughts after kind of going through it. So, what really caught me was the tagline, which is world building made easy. Obviously, if you're a fan of the channel, you know I do quite a bit of world building, so any sort of world building supplements, I like to get my little fingies on. So, this is the one that kind of stood out to me. I'm always a sucker for a good, fresh resource, like new ideas from other people's brains, so I'm not always just regurgitating my own ideas. Always like to try to incorporate other people's stuff, because that gives me a much broader range creatively about what I'm doing for my TTRPG games, my world building. And let's be crib, what I like, what I don't like, move on from there. Also, as anybody who watches the channel knows, I am a big fan of random tables, which is one of the things that was promised in here. I will be honest, not a ton of random tables. And the ones that are in here are, I think there's just one, actually. I think there's only one random table in here. And technically, maybe the loot for some of these NPCs could be a random table, but they are not set up and numbered as to be such. Very interesting. So I think really the only roll table in here is under the country section. There is a D10 roll table for like a one-line description of some countries. Like, let's see, number 4, Isaria. Education-focused land where citizens study for life. That's neat. I like that. It doesn't give me a ton to work off of, but it gives me that little kernel of an idea. And of course, I feel very much as a veteran dungeon master, or game master, and world builder that's like, I can run with that. I can go do whatever I need to do with that. So like I said, it did remind me One-Shot Wonders, which I picked up last year. And I liked One-Shot Wonders. My biggest gripe with this, and it is going to be very similar to kind of my gripes with what I picked up this year, is that it doesn't match very well the low fantasy style of game that I play. It is very much in a crease of its own style of fantasy, which is a very relatively high fantasy, very modern lens at which we're viewing through a fantasy kind of civilization. So it just doesn't match it, but it doesn't mean that it couldn't. Forward. It's not that as if, look, I pick this thing up and I'm like, it's absolutely useless, I would never use it. It's like, no, actually, specifically I pull out this. I know this from like, but Curtain Call, which is about these performers in a traveling caravan, which I think they're all tieflings, or at least most of them are tieflings, are in a, somebody gets murdered, I think, right? Yeah, murder investigation. And it's like, I could use this in my current campaign. In Polytown, there is a theater. I could drop this in and use it. Unfortunately, just none of my players at this moment are interested in that theater. They have not. It's on the map. They've looked at it. I've explained what it is. It was like the first thing I explained when they came through the gate, because it's right next to the gate of the town, and they moved on for that. And unfortunately, the one player character who probably would have been interested in that is not really part of the group anymore. So I could use this, and I would if I had a chance to. Right now, I don't have that. So those were kind of my expectations going into it. So what did I get? I really appreciate it's in both of these things, but there is a nice little introduction from Sam, who is a co-founder of Roll and Play Press, the people who put this out. And I really appreciate that. You can really feel sort of the love and pride that they have for the products. So it's always nice to see that little personal note talking about why they developed it based off of their own needs, as being like, oh, I'm busy, I don't have time to prep in midweek, I need stuff that's really easy for me to like pull and drop into the world that I'm making, because I don't have the time to make like every little piece of minutia that's in it. I really enjoyed that. I will say that the the layout in general, like this layout, is a significant step up from One Shot Wonders. One Shot Wonders has a very boilerplate, not necessarily a bad way, just boilerplate as in a very straightforward organization. The problem with this, and I'll show this off again, is that you'll notice if I swap to another page, all the same information is slightly in a different place on the page. So while important characters were over here and key locations are up here, key locations have been moved over to this other page on this one, as are secret and clues, and doesn't have some of the other stuff that's over there. And the quest rewards, and this one doesn't really have any quest rewards. And doesn't give you a level. Yep. So, I mean, like, it's different, but when it comes to a place like Homebrew, like, even, they did a great job right on the inside cover. They tell you, hey, here's where all the information is on the page. And I really enjoy that. Like that, you can see how when you get, if you get the full 250 page plus book, how it's going to be super easy to find all that information and find the tags. And, you know, it seems like everything in there is color coded in addition to having text knockouts so you can pick up what it is. So both good if you are colorblind or not colorblind, which is always good. You hate to see color coding in a supplement and then realize that actually there's a pretty significant portion of population, especially the male population, that is colorblind. I am lucky that I am not colorblind, but it is something to consider that you can't just use color to highlight things. You also need to find some other way to do it because sometimes they won't be able to do that. Hey, what's going on, Diana? Yeah, we're jumping in. We're taking a look at some stuff that came out for Free RPG Day. That's what we're doing. So come along with us. We're talking about No Place Like Homebrew, which is a supplement that helps with world building for dungeon masters and game masters. So yeah, the organization is so much better, and I can tell it's hard to tell in this like 16-page one, but it seems like there's very much sections that are things are broken down. Where like, oh, there's factions, and there are countries, and there are NPCs, and then there's stuff that's situated by like biomes, like caves and deserts, or what's in here. And then there's a section for like taverns and inns and stuff like that. So really nice to have like all these dedicated sections you can go and pull a whole bunch of different examples from, so you don't feel like you're rerunning the same stuff over and over again too quickly, which is nice. I especially like in the back the campaign primer page, which was not a thing I was expecting would be in here. They're right in the very back. We have this campaign primer section, which we'll talk about a little bit here in a second. I want to get through some of the other stuff. So in general, I kind of expected it to be a miss, this product to be kind of a miss for me, and primarily I'm basing that off of as somebody who had like a Dungeons and Dragons 3rd edition book that was basically a big book of NPCs that I had for at least a decade, and I was like, I think I maybe used it once before I got rid of it, until honestly I kept forgetting that I had it. At some point I was like, oh, I'm not using this, so I think I'm gonna pawn this off to somebody I think will find it more useful than, obviously, I'm not using it. So I knew looking at that something like this was always going to be probably not my jam, because I don't know, it's just the kind of person I am. Like, I kind of want to make all the noodly stuff myself. I don't really want to drag and drop a bunch of stuff, but I like it as a source of inspiration. That's the value I will get out of it. Is a source of inspiration for me. Stuff. Oh yeah, big session at the gym. Getting swole at the gym. Big workout. I worked out this morning as well. Probably not quite as big a session as you. Just a medium session. Just a medium session, not a big session. So one of the things that I said that I kind of struggled with this, and this is more about a me-specific kind of thing. Like I said, I kind of run a low fantasy, very almost historical medievalist. So this is very much viewed through a lot of contemporary 5e, 5.5 content, where it very much has that modern lens that we're looking at stuff. To kind of give an explanation of that, there are two full-time artists. Like, there's a writer and a painter. There's a spelunking club for cave diving. There are traveling lecturers, a lonely geologist, and an inn. The one inn that we get in here can host like hundreds of people. And when I look at that, my brain through the historical lens is like, none of those things would make any sense in my game. But for a lot of people, it would make total sense in the game, because it's not built. Their worlds aren't built the same way that mine are. Not better, not worse, just different. So, yeah, so here's a cute diagram. This is all that one inn. It has like over 100 rooms, I think, and most of those rooms house more than one bed. So you're talking about like hundreds of people stay at this place. I'm like, how could that possibly be full all the time? How many people are traveling? Like, hotels aren't even like that most of the time. I don't know what to say, like, there's not whimsy in my game, because that makes it seem like I don't put whimsy in my game. But in my current campaign, we've got a Warforged perfumer, and we've got a mischievous quizmaster, and there's a talking raccoon. But those are very much the exceptions. Most people are kind of standard historical kind of people. Most people are dirty peasants and laborers. There are a few artisans kind of in the middle, and there's a noble class up at the top, for the most part. And then, of course, you have a whole series of religious figures off on the side. Oh, and I did want to point out something that's in this intro note that I found there. Where it talks about, and if you do want to build a world from scratch, the back of the book is packed with advice on how to turn the contents of the book into something completely your own. And I like that, and after looking at like the campaign primer stuff that's in the back, I'm like, that sounds super helpful. Like some of this, and I'll also note that they, on the first page, it's inside cover, it's a little buried, but they have a Homebrew world builder sheet. It's like a little download thing. I can pull it up. How about that? Roll and play. .com/LH world builder. Do that off here in a second. Oh, did I put it in wrong? I put it. But I know it exists because I looked at it earlier. LH. Alright, I don't know why it's redirecting me. So I guess we won't look at it, but it does exist. I think I'm probably just putting the stuff in wrong. Oh, it's roll and play press. That's why. User error, of course. LH. There we go. Okay, I got it. Slowly but surely, I got it. There we go. So, super useful little sheet down here that tells how to create a world pretty quickly. Tells you a little bit, you know, what are the deities going on with that? What are the planes that are going on? Level of magic, world age, all that fun stuff. Starting environment, your starting settlement, and your first session quest hook. And I think there's some spot for like some... No, maybe not. Maybe that's just in the primer section where they talk about some session 0 questions. I guess it's just in the primer. But, you know, that's a nice free thing you can download if you're the sort of person who has trouble making up that stuff, or you just need a shorthand way to do that. Highly recommend. I will be stealing this for myself. In fact, I've already downloaded it. I probably should have just pulled up the local file instead of looking for it online. Oh well. That's what we did. Oh, what are my main games for stream? Primarily Dungeons and Dragons. Right, because you're over on the Twitch side. So primarily, I'm playing D&D solo most of the time. Which is a very different way to play Dungeons and Dragons if you've never tried it before. Whether D&D or solo D&D, both are different. Very different style of game. But yeah, that's generally what I end up streaming most of the time. Occasionally I'll stream video games. Right now I'm in the middle of playing Final Fantasy 12 Zodiac Age. But I have not been streaming it. I haven't been good about it. Mainly because I'm too scuffed at it that I won't make it entertaining. I'm not a huge Final Fantasy head, so it takes me... I am slow at it. And especially 12. 12's a very different beast. Let's see. So, yeah. So overall, kind of my general feelings about it was, this is a book that, for me, is very much like give a man a fish rather than helping him fish for himself. I think there are people that definitely have a source like this is incredibly useful for that. For me, I'm like, I want those roll tables. I want world building, not world built. But that is a primary conceit of this and brought up to it. So it's not like they didn't deliver on the thing. It's that I'm not necessarily the core audience for what they're looking for. But I do want to talk about a few things that did surprise me about it when I was going through it there. The first one is that these are going to be impossible for me. But at the bottom of each page, there's this little tiny strip. And each one gives you a little world building prompt. Like, we're in the cave sections. So this one says, cave residents adapt to living in darkness and will be sensitive to bright light. Okay, well, that's not a good one. Let's do a different one. That one's more just like a tip. There are some that just are kind of prompts. There we go. Here's the one that's under countries. If your country borders others, think about whether the lands have good relationships or are they in conflict. So those are nice. I like those kinds of things that give me like nice little prompts and roll tables to help me think about the things that I should be thinking about, rather than just straight up telling me. Again, that's a me thing. For the right person, especially somebody who's time crunched, or, you know, some people, like my partner, doesn't ever feel like they're super creative, so something like this is a nice easy way to just kind of grab something that's already pre-built and drop it in, whether you are short on time or creativity. So it's good for that stuff. Another thing that really surprised me was the art. I thought the art was really fantastic. There's a lot of great art. I already showed off the dragon, which I thought was really good. There's also this piece for Franzia, which has this dragon swooping through this sort of mustard yellow waste, almost like radioactive waste, mist, fog, pollution, smog kind of thing. Really cool. What's another? Oh yeah, like I really enjoyed this one of Ludwia. I like anything that kind of shows off people that just kind of seem like regular old people in the setting. I like that. And like what generic folk might be looking like when they're out and about. Yeah, it's got some very good art in there. I was surprised. I think that the art is significant upgrade from One-Shot Wonders. Not the One-Shot Wonders is bad. It just has a very different feel to it. Very different style to it, I would say. Also, it's got that copper arms. That's the tavern and inn that we looked at. Get that massive diagram of it, which is really, really cool. So other things that surprised me. There's a significant number of dragons in here. There are 4, technically 7, dragons in the first 3 pages of this. As a person who's not the biggest dragon fan, that's certainly a dragon overload for me. But, you know, they are the legendary creatures in the name. Their name's in the title of the game. Most people like dragons. I know I'm the weird one here. But for me, I was like, that's a lot of dragons and very few pages. And even though, like, the Precept Regents, that's the one where it's technically 4 dragons, a family of 4 dragons, but most of the time they are in their humanoid form. So, I would probably just run them as humanoids. I'm not sure that necessarily get a ton. Like, it's kind of a fun, like, haha, dragons. But I think it would work just as well if they were just plain old people. That's the main thing. Other things is that the cave, and I said there was a section on caves and a section on deserts. So you got 4 pages in here. What I found surprising is that they are pretty much entirely focused on creatures that you would find in those locations. Like there's like a stone giant, there's the geologist, these things called cephalopods, which are essentially cave-dwelling octopi, seems like, or squids. Got these dune shredders. Some of them, they have dune shredders, which they're calling land sharks, which seems a little weird because we already have boleys in D&D, which are basically land sharks. But it is kind of reinventing stuff. I don't love that there's not like any stat blocks in there. I know this is a system-agnostic thing, so we're not going to get like D&D stats for stuff, but just to kind of give us an idea of like, are they strong? Are they fast? Are they healthy and hale? Are they like kind of what's their jam stat wise, so I can kind of figure out which ones to kind of grab and use? Because some of these will give you optional stat blocks. Like the cephalopods tells you to use a giant octopus or a Grick stat block for D&D 5e 5.5. So it kind of gives you, some of them do that, and then others don't. So it's a little, what do I do with the ones that don't? And if I have to make up that stat block, which I'm happy to do, but I need a little bit more information about the creature itself so I can have a gist of kind of what stats to give it. But I also would have, like, for caves and deserts, would have appreciated something more like a caravan faction, or some sort of like secret locations that are hidden in shifting sands. Something that wasn't just like random NPCs. Like, it's like, that's okay, but I could take any of those random NPCs and kind of put them anywhere. Like, I can put the writer and artist and painter basically anywhere. They don't really need to be in the desert or in the caves. And like the terracotta and silt are brick masons that use termite mounds, which is a little weird to have in the desert where there's not a lot of trees and termites eat wood. So little strange. So it's just some of the stuff is that the NPCs don't really seem often very specific to the area that they're in. With the exception, I would say, of the painter and the spelunking club. Like, those are both clearly supposed to be in caves, but a geologist could be anywhere. They don't have to be in a cave. So, like, if I had to kind of draw an overall summation of it, everything that's in No Place Like Homebrew, I'd say it's a marked improvement in offering from One Shot Wonders, which came out in, the full book came out in 2021, but this was just from last year, I believe. And this book just recently came out, I think. But there's a good reason when you're looking at it why this is a 2026 Annie Award nominee for Best RPG Supplement. Like, there's a lot of cool stuff in here, a lot of interesting stuff in there, especially for a certain type of Dungeon Master or Game Master. You're gonna get a lot of use out of something like this. I'm just unfortunately not that person. So what would I look at and maybe doing like similar or alternative recommendations? And I want to try to pick things from the same publisher if I can. So I'm going to go back to... I can go back to their thing. Let's pull up Roleplay. More from the publisher, please. Let's So I would say they do have something I like. Yes, you should. I'm ordering something right now. Would probably be the one I'm looking for. Just this one? Oh, there was a specifically Dungeon Master. Maybe not. Books. Yeah, here it is. I would say the Game Master's Fantasy Tool. So this is a thing that would be more aligned to what I want. Which very much kind of hits more stuff that I want, where you're going to have a lot more roll tables, very specific things like, hey, different types of taverns and inns, tavern interiors. Larger. Look at. So names for those places, things like that. Loot and plunder, always nice. Critical hits and critical misses. Frozen encounters, forest encounters, so like biome encounters, which is very nice. Super useful if you run sort of a traveling, more exploratory kind of game, and you want people to be able to see what's going on in that area so they can run into stuff that makes sense for that area without having to do a whole bunch of prep work. This would be something more aligned with what a resource that I would probably use. In addition to that, it's also just got some good things going on. There's also a sci-fi one, by the way. First of all, it's spiral bound, and I really like that. So it will lay flat on the table. It's also A5 size, so it's a slightly smaller form factor. Many of books down on the shelf behind me are roughly A5. They might be digest sized, which are very similar. I like that as somebody who is a Dungeon Master or Game Master who primarily runs out of a bag, because I'm usually a traveling one rather than running at home. It's nice to have smaller books with all the same stuff in it. I like having the smaller books and the super big books. Lighter in my bag and easier to stuff things in there. Outside of something that's from Roll and Play, I'll be honest, there are more supplements of NPCs and locations and factions than you can kind of shake a stick at, especially for D&D. So, because world building is such a massive umbrella to kind of drop all that stuff under, I would say consider what you struggle with when it comes to world building or prepping for sessions. Do you struggle to come up with NPCs? Okay, then find something that has NPCs in it that you like. There's a billion resources for that, so it's hard for me to recommend one. Do you have something that's like struggle with building settlements? There's a lot of settlement building stuff. There's really small ones, very tiny ones, or there's like really big in-depth ones, weird stuff like Vornheim, and there's a sci-fi one, like a cyberpunk one that I really like, called Altered Reality, which is really great for building a Night City style kind of environment. Very cool for that, and has like lots of dice drop tables in it, which is really cool. That's fun. Or things that'll help you come up with nations. So it kind of depends on whatever it is, the thing that you struggle to come up with. Zone in on that and pick something out of it. it's pretty easy to go through and look through things and be like, hey, if you're the sort of person who wants things like a spelunking club and weird stuff like that in your D&D games, then you're gonna look for something that's got more of that modern lens on it for something like this. Or maybe you're like me, and you're gonna look at something that's a little bit more like Ironsworn, which is on the shelf behind me, which is kind of focuses on this Iron Age Vikings time, kind of small settlements, isolated settlements kind of thing. And that would be something that's a little bit more my speed, because it tends to be that lower fantasy kind of style that I enjoy and run. But that is it for No Place Like Homebrew. So, good. Market improvement, I think, from One Shot Wonders, which is what came out before. So I am really excited to see what they do in the future and see what they come out with next. I am also more interested in checking out maybe the sci-fi book, because I feel like I have 1,000,000,001 world building resources for fantasy. Sci-fi ones are a little bit harder to come by, so that would be the one that would be maybe a little bit more interesting to me, especially with all little roll tables and stuff. I like that stuff. All right, let's talk about Dungeons Kittens. The other one we were going to look at today. Dungeons and Kittens. Let's go. Dungeons and Kittens is put out by Edge, and they were doing yeoman's work this year. They came out with 3 different free RPG Day stuff. I got 2 of them. I did not get the Arkham Horror one. Arkham Horror for me is a little bit too close to Call of Cthulhu, and I don't know enough about it to be like, eh. Also don't play a lot of Call of Cthulhu. Not that I dislike the system. Don't play with people who really enjoy playing in that time period and doing Cthulhu stuff. But I have played it before, and I have enjoyed it. And it is the basic role-playing Chaosium system, so it's back there. But Chaosium also put out stuff this year. But this time they only did Age of Vikings, which all uses this D100 kind. So we are going to talk about Dungeons and Kittens, an afternoon outing. So, what to say about this thing? So, if you watched my preview of like the free RPG Day stuff, you notice that this was not on my list of things to pick up. It was fully not. It was not something I had entertained picking up. I hadn't thought about it. But one of those things, I ended up going out. And when I was out there, my partner was with me, and they took a look at it and thought it was really cute. And so, like, do you want me to pick it up? And I was like, I guess. Yeah, it's in your hands, so why not? So I figured that this was going to be, I expected it to be a very cutesy exploitation TTRPG with not a lot of meat on its bones and pretty bare bones mechanics wise. Just kind of more of a vibe than kind of a crunchy game. It's gonna be pretty simple. Just sit down, a very much kind of cutesy beer and pretzel kind of game where we get together, have a few drinks, and roll around as cute kittens. That was kind of what I thought it would be. And when my partner picked it up, I was like, oh, well, I do play with some friends who are legitimate, god honest catophiles. They absolutely love their cats. They have multiple, and I was like, oh, well, maybe I'll run it as a one-shot on the lark. This will probably be pretty easy. That'll make for a good, like, evening of entertainment, I suppose. Even though the adventure is pretty short, so maybe only a couple of hours. And the rules are pretty easy to teach, so again, probably a couple of hours. So we probably need something else. We can do play some board games or something after it. But that was sort of my expectations with it. I didn't really have big expectations of it because I wasn't really planning to pick it up. But then I did pick it up. And I started reading through it. And as I did, it's got, in the beginning, it starts with, what is the game? Kind of gives you the setting, lore about the setting. they have talks about the rules of the game, very kind of standard, and it's going to give you a little bit of an adventure, and then in the back you get some character sheets that are also relatively simple. So, you know, it pretty much came at the start, was giving me exactly what I thought it was going to be. Got a lot of cutesiness to it. It uses terms like, instead of magic, it's meowgic. Meow. Or the power of friendship. Or purchase items. So it's very almost nauseatingly cute in that sort of way. There's also this pretty big focus in the game on not really doing a lot of combat, which they call cat fights in the game, because of course they do. Everything's kind of got that cat reskin on it, that cukishly adorable kind of thing going on. So when I was reading through it, it's like, especially as the starting adventure, it's about as low stakes as you can get. There's not really what I would consider conflict in the adventure, which is very short. Like, it's only 3 scenes. Got 2 exploration scenes and then a social scene, essentially. So, but it doesn't have this low stakes. It has this avoidance of combat. But there are rules for combat. There are, in fact, 2 types of combat. But as I started to reach through it, and I was like, I'm starting to get this feeling when I'm reading through it, and it's like, I can't tell if this, through the design, if this is targeted towards like cat fanatic adults who are just like maybe not super familiar with TTRPGs, as like an intro TTRPG into the space for them to get into. So things are relatively simple and very straightforward as to how they're explained. Or if it's actually meant for like kids, like for children. And it doesn't say on here like any sort of ages or anything like that. So I was kind of stuck being like, I don't know. But when I was looking for an image for the thumbnail, I realized that there is in fact a trailer from like 2-3 years ago, I think. 2-3 years ago. For a Dungeons Kittens, it seems like animated show or short or OVA or movie or something. I assume some sort of like OVA kind of thing. And that was put out on French TV, and it seems very much aimed at children. I was like, oh, okay, so I think this is primarily kind of focused towards being a child's potentially first TTRPG, which is fine. It's not mechanically dense, I would say. It's pretty simple. Like I said, you can probably explain the rules to somebody in like 5 minutes. And you roll some dice. If you have advantage, you get an extra die. If you don't, you lose a die. If you are able to use your attribute, you get to, I think you get an automatic success. I think you're trying to roll your stat number lower on each of the d6. If you have an attribute that's not useful for you or is negative, you can get a friendship point to a friend, and that helps them roll. And that's pretty much the rules, by the way. that's like the core mechanic. That's easily explained, and then the rest is just like skills. When do you roll what, and what ability kind of goes with what skills for the most part. So pretty easy to discuss for the most part. Try to teach somebody how to play. So other things I looked through it is that I thought, oh well, you know, these character sheets are like super simplistic. Really not much going on. But now knowing that it's probably targeted primarily to kids, it's just they're not really making that overt in this. That makes sense. Makes it pretty easy. I question maybe doing a roll under system for that, because I think number one, subtraction is harder than addition. Not that you're really doing that, but the idea, I think that might be harder for children to recognize that low number is better than high number. I think that could be kind of difficult maybe for them to come up with. It depends on the age of the kid, right? What they're doing. So they're going to understand that. But there's also things in here like having the attributes information is like split up into different sections on the page. So trying to use it as a reference is kind of weird. There's other sorts of interesting things like they don't really provide any information about like how their childhood, which I assume is kind of like a background in D&D, has any bearing on what's happening other than just flavor text. So I guess that's because of their pre-gen, so you don't have to worry about that. I assume it makes some difference maybe as to their stats, because we don't have any idea about how to get the stats or make them. But I will say that I like that 3d6 dice pull core mechanic. It's very simple. It's got a difficulty scale to it, which is how many successes do you need. So I like that. There is a section in here about doing things like long tasks, so tasks that take like more than one action, which unfortunately I feel is really underbaked. It feels a little bit more like lip service than like a real mechanic. Like that's all you get. You get this paragraph right here, and it's not primarily all that different than a group action. So I feel like maybe there's more to that in the full game. I would have liked to see a little bit more robust, like is this a skill challenge kind of situation, kind of why I would use this instead of just standard like group roles or a standard individual role. What makes this different? I'd also say that like one of the things that kind of irked me about it is that number one, there are a lot of skills. This entire bottom section of the page is skills. There are a lot of skills in the game. And I think that makes sense because the feeling when looking at it, clearly not a class-based system. It's a skill-based system. So if you're not familiar with that, class-based would be something like D&D where you're a fighter or a wizard or a cleric or whatever. And a skill-based system would be something that more like Call of Cthulhu or Traveler or Fates like that. Savage Worlds is like that, where you don't really level up the same. World of Darkness is like that. You don't level up and get something automatically because of your class. It's like, oh, you pick and choose specifically the things that you want to be good at. So in those systems, you tend to have a lot more skills and proficiencies. That way there's a little bit easier way to delineate who can do what, because you don't get automatic stuff from like a class when you level up. But those skills have a lot of overlap. Like you have Hunter-Gatherer, which is kind of a survival check, but also there's herbology or herbology, depending on where you are, you pronounce it. And you're like, but doesn't that also follow, coming from D&D mindset, you're like, doesn't that also fall under survival? Or maybe is that nature, but also that's not animals? Because there's a separate thing for animals. And then you have, but then you have Find Your Way, and you're like, so Find Your Way is different than the Hunter-Gatherer, which is more of the survival thing. But also there's Read Sky and Stars, which also helps with navigation. You're like, okay, so that's also different. But you have Herbology and also Heal Wounds and Diseases, which is a different skill check. And then you have things like Sweet Talk and Seduce and Charm, which are two separate skills, but are both kind of persuasion. And then you have Hide in Shadows and Move Silently, which are both just kind of different ways of doing stealth. Now, something like a hide check is, especially in older editions of D&D, a fully separate thing. But it does feel weird to be like, I'm proficient or I'm trained or I'm very good at hiding in shadows, but I don't move silently. Like, well, that's weird. That feels weird to be good at one of these things and not good at the other one. In the same way that it feels weird to be good at having something like Hunter-Gatherer, but not know plants. because you're not trained in herbology. So there's some mixes up, but there are also things that I do like about the system and the way that they've broken stuff up. Primarily, the one that jumps out to my mind is they have knowledge of laws and legends, which is separate than knowledge of people and places. And I like that specifically split up. Like, one feels like more of a book learning and is more like about places in the world, which feels very different. One feels like, oh, you're more well-traveled and insightful about like culture and customs and people and places and that sort of thing. And one's like, oh, well, I've read a lot of history and I understand the laws and why they are that way and how they function. And because I've read a lot, I also understand like a lot of fictional, or maybe not fictional, they're nonfiction, myths and legends about creatures and treasures and artifacts and what have you. So I do like that. I thought that was really cool. So things that kind of surprised me, and this was actually in the little trailer I watched for the cartoon, even though it's not explicit. There's no actual words in the trailer. You can find it on YouTube. Just look up Dungeons Kittens. You can find it. It's like 2 minutes, something like that. You can watch it if you want to. There's no talking in it. You find out that adventurers are exiled basically from the big castle town or tower. I think it's just called Cat Tower. I think. No, sorry, Cat Tree City. It's called of course it's called Cat Tree City. Of course it is. But there's this thing where that the king does exile of kittens. And so all adventurers are exiles from the city. The one kind of primary city there is in this little cat kingdom. So I'm like, that's a super interesting setup. It's also very serious because it feels like, oh, they sent kids out for the most of the way this is described. Like incredibly, what we would probably call like maybe like adolescents or like tweens. Seems like those are the sort of people who are getting exiled. And it's not actually an exile. They're actually just sent on meaningless, impossible to complete quests for the king, as some sort of form of population control, or as a way to get rid of people you don't like, or make people pay for scent or whatever it is. And those feel like very, very serious, like a very serious turn for otherwise the game's tone being very lighthearted and very simple. Simple and free, like it. Again, the quick start, the actual adventure is called an afternoon outing, where there is not a ton of conflict, and then to be like, oh, also you're all exiled and are going to be forced to figure out how to live on your own out in the wilderness or in the borderlands kind of area. So it's a little weird. It also kind of, in my mind, was like, why would anybody adventure for the king then, or for anybody who's in power? Because they're not going to get any benefit from that. People that have kind of kicked you to the curb, so why would you run around trying to do things for them? But that's the thing that I find kind of interesting about it. I'm like, maybe for like the local people, but also it doesn't really give you a super good vibe here about what kind of adventures you go on in the game, because pretty much the starter adventure is just you're hanging out in the afternoon and you stumble across something. So it's hard to kind of be like, what does an adventure in the system kind of look like? What does a Dungeons Kittens adventure look like? Because this feels like it may be atypical to what the game is mostly about. Other things I found very surprising is the multiple styles of art. So, got this little kitty right here. They somewhat more realistic, and then you have this one over here on the opposing page, which is almost got this kind of paper craft, no outline feel to it. Got kind of a standard cartoony kind of look, which is pretty much what I would say the animation trailer looks like for the most part. And then you've got your super deformed like chibi over here. So you have 4 pages in a row with 4 different art styles, and they don't all quite work together. Like, I'd say the ones on pages do work well together. I feel like that feels, you have your normal characters and then you have your super deformed chibi characters, and I think that works really well as a style. But then you also have these 2 other styles that are kind of going on. So it is pretty weird. The art does feel a little kind of all over the place because of that. And so I thought it was interesting when I was like, oh, well, they probably just use, I mean, that's not super unusual for a, say, a more economical TTRPG or publishing kind of thing, where they're just kind of grabbing art from all different kinds of people of all different levels and styles and tones and stuff like that. But the weird thing is that you, looking at the front credits on the page, all the work's primarily done by one person with the assistance of one other person. So that's all who's credited in the front. So I'm like, oh, so you have one person who's doing like 4 different art styles in the book? That seems strange. As somebody who has sort of that marketing branding background, be like, well, that's probably not a thing you should do for the most part. It does make it hard to tell, like, your stuff from any other cat TTRPG, which there are a few, so it's kind of hard just from visual acuity alone, being able to tell which is which on first look. So it is a strange decision. Not bad, but it is a bit weird. Like I said, I don't think it all quite works together. But two of the 4 art styles I think complement it very well. Other things that are very interesting, or that kind of caught me by surprise. Ooh, the combat section. So there's actually 2 different types of fights. There are 2 different types of, cat fights. There are fang cat fights and claw cat fights. Fang cat fights are bristle, flattening your ears, snarling and growling, trading insults, arguing, puffing out your chest, making yourself big, and arching your back. You're not actually physically hurting each other. You're basically kind of having a shouting match and, you know, giving each other the middle finger. And then you have claw cat fights, which is the standard, like, I am trying to hurt you kind of fight that we know. So it's interesting that cat fights are broken up into 2 things, and I actually really like that, because I think most TTRPGs, one of the things that we struggle with, especially for newer dungeon masters or game masters trying to get into the hobby, is that there's not really a lot of framework for how do you do something that's not a fight. There's not really an exploration framework in the same way that is like combat, roll initiative, rounds, everybody gets a turn in the round. At the end of the round, these things happen. At the start of initiative, these things happen. This is when you make these saves. This is how time passes through it. When exploration is just kind of like, you kind of walk around for the most part, and sometimes things happen, and then sometimes they don't. And social is even more loosey-goosey than that. At least in exploration, sometimes you'll something like dungeon turns, but in social scenes, they're just kind of like, you just kind of wing it. So these cat fights, like a fang cat fight, feels very much like a bristling. I like this because I think TTRPGs need a little bit more of an escalation of violence. Because basically we go from talking to immediately killing each other in most TTRPGs. Whereas this is like, oh, you're talking, now there's kind of a shouting and maybe shoving match, and then it's like, oh, now we're actually trying to hurt each other. So I like that escalation of violence, which means you can also de-escalate the violence. Very cool. So I like all of that. Wish there was more of it. And the way that you end combat is actually really, really useful. So the way that you end combat is essentially if you drop to 0 heart points, which is their hit points, you can either give up, you just concede, and you're like, they win. And it says explicitly in the game, it's like anybody who surrenders, you allow them to surrender, and you don't do anything to them. You don't hurt them, you don't kill them, you don't do anything like that. It says, in the world of Dungeons and Kittens, surrender is always respected, and defeated opponents are treated with respect and dignity. That includes both the player characters being defeated, but also any of their adversaries. They're expected to give quarter, essentially. But if you don't want to concede, and you're in a fight, you can make a roll for smarts or shake your booty, which is kind of their athletics, to flee, or you can roll for cute or seduce and charm to talk your opponent into ending a cat fight. So it gives you this opportunity where it's like, okay, you have been knocked down to 0 heart points. You can try to transition the scene into a parlay negotiation by making a persuasion style check, or you can try to run away and it becomes maybe more of like a chase scene, which I really like. I think that that's incredibly helpful as a Dungeon Master or Game Master to be like, oh, now this ability to flow between different types of gameplay and different types of scenes is very, very fluid. It's supported very well by the mechanics of the game. It's incredibly smart design. I really like it. Again, this is one of the things where it's just like, this game is doing a lot of smart stuff that I wasn't really expecting out of this game. It's got some really cool stuff. In addition to that, there's also a wounds table. Surprisingly, there is a wounds table. And the wounds are like bruises, minor injury, major injury, serious injury, very serious injury, critical injury. Which may kind of knock you out of commission. Like the top 3 will knock you out of commission for at least a day. Which maybe not the greatest design. It has sort of the same problem that stun does in D&D, is that it's not fun to not be able to do stuff and being like, oh, you're knocked out of commission for like 1d6 days where you can't do anything. Well, if you're in the middle of an adventure, you're like, cool, so I don't get to do the rest of the adventure. So I think that could be baked a little bit more, try to figure out something else out of it. But they do work a little bit more like exhaustion levels from 2014 D&D as to things where it's like, oh, you get disadvantage on rolls, and that's nice. It does give you some interesting stuff to do in there. The other big thing that's in there is it's initiative and turn. So when I was first reading through this and I skipped things down and I was looking at the actions of combat, I was like, why are these actions specifically saying whether it is an aggressive or non-aggressive action? Like, why is that important? It's because I missed the important part about initiative. I thought, of course, I just blew past initiative thinking, oh, it'll probably be just like standard initiative. You roll for whatever the equivalent of quickness is, or something like that, which is probably smarts in this game. Yeah, it would probably be smarts in this game. So it could be strong, maybe. So I was like, oh, you probably roll that. Whoever rolls the lowest gets to go, etc. Very standard initiative style. But actually what happens is that the players always act first in a cat fight, unless the kittens were surprised. You can perform one of these actions and move a short distance. Players act in whatever order they choose. So it actually has a popcorn initiative. So you roll, you're rolling up against some other kitties and you're deciding you're going to get into a scrum. You're going to get into a real fight over this stuff. Perfect. You're doing it. You're into the fight. Doing the whole thing. First person goes, it's like, oh, I'm going to use this. And I make this attack or whatever. And then if they make an attack, the storyteller, the game master, gets to choose who goes next. So if you take an aggressive action on your turn, the game master gets to determine who's going to go next. But if you do a non-aggressive action on your turn, which is generally stuff like defending, interacting with things, moving, helping another player, things of that stuff, things that aren't, as you might imagine, overtly aggressive, you get to choose who goes next. So it does kind of, I can envision it in my mind that there is a lot of things where everybody who's trying to do like aiding kind of actions or trying to unlock doors or use a healing potion, or I don't even know if healing potions are in this game, or something like that, if they're trying to do something of that nature, they're going to be front loaded in the initiative. So you're going to try to do all your help actions, that kind of stuff first. So that way you all, as many of you get to go before the adversaries or monsters, because you're going to lose the initiative the moment that you start doing something aggressive. And then the dungeon master will, or game master will be storyteller in this system, will have the ability to choose who goes next. Probably going to pick their monsters. Probably going to pick their guys to go next, unless they're trying to force somebody to make a save or something like that. Which you could, like in the intro adventure, one of the things is when the kittens falls in the water, and presumably they could drown, even though there's literally no rules for that. As to, there's no like what would happen if they aren't successful. It's just like, no, they will be successful. It's just how long is it going to take them. There are consequences for failure going forward, but not huge ones. Definitely not a life-threatening moment. But if that was the case, you might be, as a game master, be like, actually, I want that character who's about to get swept away by the water, if they had fallen into, say, a river instead of a pond, I want them to go next, because I want them to move further down the river, so everybody has to decide whether they want to stay in this fight or start chasing after their friend. And then, when they get it back, they can choose their bad guys or whatever. Nice and fun. So I really enjoyed a lot of that. It also has this focus on a barter economy, which is very fun, where things kind of have a static value, which is neat. And there's no change. So if you try to exchange something for more than that, then you're just kind of SOL. But it is nice to have like this barter economy. So there's a lot of focus on those precious items and trading those and doing things like that, which includes kind of the MacGuffin for the adventure itself. One of the things that I do think is weird about it is the magic. So the magic. Most of it is not really what I would consider to be magic. It just kind of seems like the stand-in for kind of class actions. Like things like, oh, the ranger character is better at traversing the wilderness, so we gave them a magic spell that basically lets them do that. Here's the dart. Yeah, as quick as a flash. The nice thing is that you have to roll every time that you want to use a spell, which is very cool. So there's no, if you fail, it doesn't appear like you lose any resources, but you do kind of lose that action. Like, for quick as a flash, you need to make a smarts roll, and you need to make 2 successes. His smart's only 2, so he only has like a 1 in 3 shot, or a little bit better than that, to actually get it off. But if you do until the next dawn or dusk, whichever comes first, the kitten can run twice as fast and 3 times as long as normal without getting tired. Again, not necessarily feels like magic, just kind of feels like something they have because they are this ranger style of kitten try to play. And the Meowgic just kind of feels like a veneer that we polished over a lot of the classes, or to add things that would normally be like class features. But there are some things like this one has sound and vision. Kitten is surrounded by sounds, music, and lights and can put on a show. Also, very funny about the pre-gen characters is that most of the Meowgic that they get fundamentally useless in the adventure that they are provided. Even like both of the, potentially maybe the song and dance one would be, that could potentially be useful with the last encounter, but being able to run fast or jump high is not super useful. I mean, maybe to get a branch you could potentially use. No, sorry, it's just for running, not jumping. So you actually don't move. You stay static in the same area for the entire adventure. So you actually don't need to run anywhere. So kind of a useless thing. Same thing with like one of the characters in the back where they have Cat Haven. where they find a protected, hidden, comfortable, warm place where they can spend the night and snooze quietly, undisturbed. Which feels like it should be, again, like a ranger druid kind of I can find respite in the wilderness kind of thing. And maybe not necessarily a spell. Also, there's not one ability score that's used for any of the magic. They're all over the place. Like the finding a haven, the cat haven is a strong roll, which is primarily like a body thing. So it's just me making the haven. That doesn't really feel like a spell then. It's a little gripe. It just feels like, maybe it doesn't quite. We've chosen a name because we're playing a fantasy TTRPG and not because we really have a kind of a robust magic system. Which is kind of interesting. But the thing that probably really surprised me one of the most is the actual intro adventure itself. So, like I said, the intro adventure is really not, just reading through it, nothing really special. In fact, it's actually, I might even say, quite boring. Which again made me think is like, maybe this is meant for children. Because there's really not a lot going on. So scene 1 is one of the cats falls in the water at a pond where they're all hanging out. And they can't swim. Now there's no chance of them drowning. That's not on the board. So it's just kind of like, what are they doing before that happens? Then how do they help the character that's in the water? They do make it clear that Cheesy, which is the character in the back that has the cat haven, which is this guy, by the way. The one that looks like he spent his entire life in a bush. He is basically like a wild cat. Like a wildling. The only character, apparently, who cannot swim. Even though the rest of them seem to have lived their entire lives in the cat tower city. So, interesting choice. Why they made that one be the one that falls in. But again, so just kind of like reading the adventure, there's that. He fell in the water because he saw something shiny in the water. The second scene is about getting the shiny thing out of the water, which they find out to be a golden tiara. Scene 3 is, hey, this envoy of the king was looking for that because the bird who had it, messenger bird, dropped it. And so they came to this area to find it, and they have a discussion with the piece about giving it back to them. In which no doesn't is kind of an answer, but again, also weird that you went exploration, social scene. And I would have liked that social scene to have the potential to be like a Fang cat fight. But that's not even on the board. They don't even give us like any statistics for the guards that are there, just in case the players decided that they wanted to not give the tiara over and did want to resist. Like, that's not really an option. So, like, on the surface, the adventure's nothing to really kind of write home about. Anything, it's like I said, it's a little boring, a little predetermined. There's not really a lot of risk in anything as a one shot. And the only thing they get out of it is the tiara, which is worth a lot, but also it's the end of the one shot. What are they going to spend it on? Doesn't do anything for them. It's just money. At the end of the day, they just got some money. But what's really nice is that there, right before it, is a very cool GM section, which is a nice little 2-page spread, which talks about like how to be the storyteller. What you'll do is that you'll set the scene, you'll improvise as needed, and you'll try to engage everyone at the table in the game. And you primarily want to try to keep the action going so nothing gets tilted. Gives you some ideas about how to use the rules. And use the rules when you don't know what happens next, which has this nice like 6-step system. Where it's like, if you are absolutely brand new to like TTRPGs, this is how you do it. Do you know what happens next when a kitten tries something? If so, then that's what happened. If not, then go to the next step. Pick one of the kitten's abilities. Think about what the kitten is trying to do and which of the three is most important to success. That's the ability the player needs to roll. Number 3, ask the player if they have a skill or cattribute. That's a cat attribute that can help. If so, let them gain its benefit. Gives them like an extra die to roll. Number 4, on a scale of 1 to 4, with 4 being the hardest, pick the action's difficulty. If you're not sure which to pick number 2. So number 2, 2 successes is like normal difficulty. 5, finally the player rolls. 6, if they succeed, tell the player how they succeeded. If they fail, have the player tell you what happened to make them fall short. That's it. And like, yeah, that's pretty much GMing. That's pretty much what it is. So like, that section really kind of knocks it out very, very quickly to tell you like, hey, you can do this. This is super simple enough. The thing that is really, really interesting about the intro adventure, though, thing that like I said, the intro adventure kind of boring, weird, but what I do like about it is that it's structured in a way in which everybody at the table, or at least 3 of the people at the table, should be running a scene. Each one of them should be the storyteller. Each person should be a storyteller for a different scene, which is very, very cool. And it tells you which ones based off of who's playing what character. And I thought, ooh, that's such a fantastic idea for a like quick start for a TTRPG. Be like, oh, you're starting a game. You know, maybe nobody knows how to play this game. Hey, maybe we should all take a chance at like a round at running the game in the same adventure, so that way everybody gets an opportunity to play a character, and everybody gets an opportunity to dip their toes into like what it's like to actually run a game. And it's one scene. Again, the stakes are super low. There's not really a lot going on in most of these scenes, so it's pretty straightforward to run. But I like that. I think that's a perfect thing to incorporate for a quick start. Because I think if you are a game master or a dungeon master or a storyteller or a keeper or whatever we're calling this role in whatever your system of choice is, it really sucks to be the person who's very excited about the game because they want to play in the game. And the only way you can play the game is by running the game for others, or maybe not as interested. This is very much my personal dilemma with Starfinder. I really like Starfinder, the first edition. Honestly, I haven't looked at the second edition at all. I really should. But I really loved Starfinder first edition. It's what I wanted Pathfinder second edition to be. Pathfinder second edition is not that, which was a bit of a disappointment for me. But I really love the Starfinder system. Problem is that I want to play it. I want to be the characters. I want to fly the spaceships and have the robots and tinker with all the guns. I want to do all that cool stuff and be those characters. I don't necessarily want to run that game. Because it's a game I want to play in, not run. But it is pretty much the only way I will get to play Starfinder with most groups is if I decide to run it. So I think it's really nice because I think we have so many people in the hobby now who are just adamantly opposed to running. Either most of them say like, oh, I could never do that. Some of them are scared of it. Some of them just don't want to do it because it seems like it's a lot of work or it's a lot of investment. And it can be. It doesn't have to be. But it very much can be. You really kind of play to whatever level you're willing to invest into it. So I think that this is a great way to ensure that everybody gets an opportunity to play. And everybody gets an opportunity behind the GM screen. Because I do think we need more of that in the hobby. We've heard so much about how we have a dungeon master or a game master problem. Like, we have problems with all this because we can't find people to run games. That's, I can lie to you, that's what the future of AI is going to be. Don't think that WotC is working on that for Dungeons & Dragons. You are, man, I wish that I had that naivete that you do, because they are absolutely trying to figure out how to do that, because that is the biggest problem to Dungeons and Dragons right now, is a lack of people who want to run the game, as it is for most TTRPGs. They are trying to figure out a way. They're trying to crack that nut for AI to be the Dungeon Master or Game Master. You guarantee they're working on it, regardless of what their CEO says, who definitely also admitted to having a whole bunch of AI stuff on his computer that he uses all the time. Yeah, okay, bud. Sure. Yeah, that definitely won't have any cross-pollination. I totally believe you, Chris. The last thing that I really kind of like about this that really surprised me is it's got that nice game master section at the front, or storyteller section, has the adventure in the middle, but it also, right before you get the player characters, this one page, how to be a good player. Man, do we need more of those. We need more of those in quick starts. Tell people, like, hey, it's not just about being a good game master. You can't just show up. There are some things that you need to do to make sure that the engine runs smoothly of the game in the group. And it's broken down very easily. Get into the game. It's pretty straightforward. Like, try, participate, be in it. The second one, listen. It's primarily a game where people talk to each other. You gotta listen. If you're not listening, then everybody's repeating themselves, and that slows everything down. A game that can already be very, very slow, or a style of game that can already be very, very slow. It also talks in here, the group won't always do what you want. Don't insist on always getting your way, and never act grumpy or mean because the group won't do what you want. Again, now I have the knowledge of being like, oh, this is primarily probably written for kids, but I know a lot of adults who can also use that lesson. Plenty of adults who could use that lesson. Be like, hey, it's still like a social thing with a group, so I know you didn't get your way this time, but hey, I need you to kind of like lock in, and it's okay to not be happy about it, but you can't drag everything to a stop because of it. Speak up. Yeah, participate, speak up, say your piece. It also says the storyteller can also help you. Yes, as a storyteller, you'll definitely be doing that. Trying to make sure that when it says engage every player, try to ensure everybody has a chance to say or do something around the table, so you don't have. Definitely played in groups, and I don't think I've run for groups because I'm pretty good about trying to show the spotlight most of the time. I've definitely played in groups where you can have like one big personality that kind of runs over a lot of people at the table, and those are not necessarily fun. And when you have a dungeon master or storyteller, whatever, game master, whatever system, who's not trying to make space so everybody gets a shine of the spotlight. Also, it's a game. You can try almost anything. I remember the storyteller puts a lot of work into managing the game. Sometimes you might want to visit a place or talk to a character the storyteller isn't ready to present to you. If that happens, find something else to do in the game. When the storyteller is ready to add that character or place to the game, and go back and revisit it. That's pretty good advice. Mainly because, and this is the thing that I think we need to do a lot more as a Dungeon Master Game Master, we need to be a little bit more clear sometimes when it's like, if you have a group that's decided to run off after some side comment you made about something, and they're like, oh, well, we've decided to upend this entire session, we're gonna only focus on that for the next 3 sessions. Be like, I gotta be honest, guys, I have not made anything for that. So we can do that, but I'm letting you know, one, we can do it right now, and we're just gonna improvise everything. So the quality may vary. Number 2, if you want to do that, that's fine. And let's finish up what we're doing right now and then check it out. And that'll give me time to actually prep that thing. Just to be a little bit more open and honest about the things that you have prepped, which is conflicting advice of what I feel like I usually give and things that I usually try to practice, which is not sort of do the Wizard of Oz reveal, don't show the man behind the curtain. Trying to make sure, like, of course I planned everything and everything is exactly how it would be, and it's not like I totally improvised things or you said something and said, actually that's better than what I had planned, and we're going to use that instead. And because it does help the game enjoyment for everybody around the table if you don't pull back the curtain on that stuff. But I do think that there is a practicality in situations where it's like, if you guys decide to do this, we're fully off the rails and I'm just making stuff up, or I'm going to need like a 10-minute break, order some food, get some drinks, whatever, use the bathroom as I sketch out what I think this might be. I think that's practicality will override the fantasy of the game. And the last one is using the rules. Rules can't cover everything. And if you don't know what to do, talk about it with everybody at the table. That's what this section says. At the end, the storyteller has the final vote on how the rules work. So try to come to a consensus. If you can't come to a consensus, one of the privileges of running the game is that you get to determine those sorts of aspects. So if you want to determine how the game is, you got to run the game. That's the privilege of being the storyteller. That's one of the few privileges. It's a lot of fun. People always gripe about it. It is a lot of fun. It's a different type of fun than playing a character in the game. It's not necessarily less fun. It's not necessarily more fun. Though some people do find it more fun. Some people do find it less fun. I find it pretty equal. I like running, but it is a very different style. For me, it's about, I enjoy getting the bonus content, what I call bonus DM content, is that, oh, I get to continue to engage with the game once our session ends, and I was like, cool, now I get prep time, and I get time to world build and build encounters and figure out fun items to put in front of my players. Like, I like that stuff. I get to be creative and throw a bunch of stuff at the wall and see what sticks and see what's cool and put in lots of fun stuff down. So I like that stuff. So I pretty much don't see prep as a hassle. It's something that I look forward to. I think that that's what will save you from burnout in the long run as a Dungeon Master, Game Master, is to find your fun in prep. You got to make prep something you look forward to, or else it's always just going to be a chore. And it shouldn't be a chore. But, in summation, kind of like the overall feelings for Dungeons & Kittens, it's got a lot of interesting details that I wouldn't expect for something that I kind of wrote off as being a one-page TTRPG, cat enthusiast, exploitation, fluff kind of thing. I thought this was going to be like a one-page TTRPG that just has a cute coat of paint on it with some fun art in it. But no, I'm like, this actually has some interesting stuff that's going on. I like the way that they're dealing with a lot of the stuff. Again, do I see myself running a full campaign in this? No. No. Sorry guys, I'm a dog person. I'm not a cat person, so that's not super interesting. But like I said, I have a lot of what I would call card-carrying catophile friends, or we'll say cat enthusiasts. And I would definitely run a one-shot for them. I might even run like a full adventure for them. I probably wouldn't buy the book for myself, but if somebody else bought the book and then handed it to me to run something for them, I would probably do that. But it's not something that I'm interested in adding to my personal library. But one of my friends might. But I would definitely be interested in running this for them, and if they liked it and they wanted to go drop the money for the full book and then bring me the full book and be like, hey, would you mind running like a full adventure for us? Running a full adventure. Like, yeah, sure, why not? I could definitely foresee myself doing that. Right now, and I'm not through looking at everything, viewing everything I've gotten for free RPG Day, but I've reviewed almost everything. So right now, I definitely say that Dungeons & Kittens is kind of my dark horse front runner, the free RPG Day this year. It well cleared my bar of expectations, and I think has a lot of interesting stuff in it, especially around the adventure and the GM and the players, like how to be good at those and how to do it. and how to have a quick start adventure that I was going to say gives everybody the opportunity, but honestly kind of forces everybody to try to take a little jump behind the screen of running a game to just get your toes wet, break the seal, see how easy it is. Once you get that under your belt, it's much easier to convince somebody after that and be like, oh, you could probably run like a full session. You already did it for like 45 minutes. You can definitely do that for like 3 times as long and do 3 different scenes. You can do that. But I think a lot of people just aren't willing to do that of their own accord. So if you have it baked in quick start, it's a very smart way to get people on board for that. So I think that this really is going to change the way that I judge other quick starts for TTRPGs going forward. I think there's a lot of cool stuff in here that I'm really happy that my partner went, yeah, here's a cute thing. Did I get it? Yes. The answer was yes. So super good. Let's see, similar or alternative recommendations. Well, there is some more stuff over here. Come back real quick. So they put out 3 things. I picked up Plague Bear. I just finished reading Plague Bear yesterday. We will talk about it. We'll have plenty to talk about it. So if you're looking for something that's wildly different, that's sort of medieval post-apocalypse, zombie apocalypse, that's for you. Based off of the Zombicide dice game, like board game. So there's that. Okay, think about some other options. Let's see. For cats, if you want to play a cat in a different system, there is Secrets of Cats, and that is a Fate in RPG. I've got Fate on them. I mean, super simple system, very easy. Uses fudge dice. If you don't know what fudge dice is, it's just a different style of d6. You can regular. You don't have to go out and buy special dice. It helps. I've got some, but very easy system. Super fun. Super. Really love the aspects of that system. So if you want to play cats, that's really good. If you want to go on the other side and you want to play dogs, there's Heckin' Good Doggos, which is playing dogs. And more of like an Oliver and Company kind of situation, or Homeward Bound kind of situation. And there's also Pugmire. Pugmire is, if you want to play dogs, anthropomorphic dogs in a more straightforward D&D style game, Pugmire is probably for you. It cleaves much closer to that classic D&D fantasy style game. Same thing, post-apocalypse, presumably humans are gone. Dogs have kind of ascended, and they are seeking to be the best boys. Very similar. So, those are the 2 things that I wanted to talk about. We'll do more of these as we go through the weeks, and as I pick out other stuff that I kind of want to take some time and focus on, but those are the ones for today. We still have some time left, so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up the solo RPG hex map for the local area, and I think we're going to drop some more of those biomes in. So I'll have that as a reference for when we start up next time, which will probably be this Saturday. No word on it, but probably going to be this Saturday. So if you want to watch that, start streaming at about midday, depending on where you are. If you're in the US, roughly midday, where we are. A little bit earlier, a little bit later, depending on where you are in the country. So we'll be doing that. I guess before that, I'm going to take a break, and I'm going to fill up some more coffee. When we come back, we'll drop that stuff in. If you guys have any questions or anything like that, you can fill in. Hang on, and I'll be back here in just a minute. All right? All right, I am back. Cheers, Chris. Cheers. Cheers, mate. All right. Let me pull up stuff. All right, so we said we're gonna do hex. Thus, we must pull up the hex. All right. So, open files. A river apart. Our league play area. Excellent. So I went ahead and finished off a little bit of this for our last stream, just kind of setting up the board. Will be helpful for us. I should go ahead and open for a reference. I don't think I'll need it, but famous last words. Better to be safe than sorry. That and wunderbar. And we'll have like that's fine. Why not? Oh, I need to add that stuff too. That's fine. We can do that. Let me go ahead and pull up the hex. Bad news. I'll never remember it. And not the hex. There we go. Hex mapping outline. Different thing. Sounds the same. Very different. Hit. Go. Alright, let's share it. We're finally ready for me to share. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Alright, and I'll go ahead and... You can go ahead and... If you guys have any questions about D&D stuff or TTRPG stuff or... No, whatever. Anything, pretty much. Mostly AMA. You can throw it in there and we'll do it. I wasn't sure how long it was going to take to get through the free RPG day stuff, so we're through it. So this is just bonus content, baby. Doing some of this stuff. All right, we need. This is what I need. I need this guy right here. All right, so this is our map. And a few fixes up here on the right. A tad bit more centered. So, this is the big ol' hex. So, as you might see, this is kind of a lot of hexes within little hexes. So, we have little hexes inside slightly larger hexes inside a much larger hex. And so, this much larger hex would be guy over here. So that's all of this represented, this area right in. As you see, we're breaking into this hex. This is where we're primarily going to be doing most of our low-level hex crawling. But I figured it would be a good time to go in and drop these things in there, which we might represent. I guess I could represent on the other side. It doesn't really matter that much. But why not? So whatever, we know that this entire area is going to be based off of swampland for the most part. So we're going to use swamp as our guiding light on our 2d6 roll table. What we're going to do right here, find out what kind of biome is there. So this just makes everything a little bit more diverse instead of having to go through tens or hundreds of miles of tens, dozens of miles. Let's do dozens or scores of miles of nautical miles of swamp and nothing but swamp. This gives us the ability to have some more diversity within that area, even though most of it will be swamp. Anything that we roll 6 through 8 is going to be swamp. There will also be a lot of water around here. We might also decide the course of the river based on what we hit. Probably not. Probably not. I'm getting ahead of myself. It's the map maker in me that's just like, just go fill out the map. No, we're filling out the map as we play. I'm not gonna do it all beforehand. Then it robs me of the pleasure of discovery. And that's what we want in this style of game. But it will be helpful for me if I have at least the guiding light for each of those hexes in there. We can get by rolling. Nice. And we'll just go down the road, baby. Alright, that's a 7. So, that means get out my little brush here. And we'll pick up this swamp. There's a swamp. That's going to be a swamp. Gotta be a swamp. So 1 swamp. Then 9 is drier. Okay, so that's gonna be like a heavy forest. Good. Swamp here. I guess. Did I make? No, I shouldn't do those. Yeah, I'm not gonna do the border hexes. Heavy forest, which is going to be region we're in, going to be straight up boreal forest. Done. Alright, another boreal forest. 2 boreal forest. And then a swamp. So we're already seeing some diversity, which is what we like. So, because we use this nice 2d6, it gives us somewhat of a bell curve. This entire area. By the way, the yellow lines are on here just to show the border into that hex, because we've already been filling out some of that stuff, because we've been moving around and gotten some rumors about stuff. We are just outside of White Birch Inn, right here. We got to get up into this area. Stake our claim, New Noble. But because we use that 2d6 roughly bell curve, most of the time we should end up with swamps more than any other thing, unless the dice go real weird on us, which they do occasionally. Should be a swamp. Alright, so that's actually 1 more verdant. Well, you can't really get more verdant than a swamp, because if you make it just more wetter than a swamp, that's just water. That will be water over here. Water, so we'll drop a little water hex in there. You know that there's probably going to be like a lake around the area, which is fine. We're just coming off a green lake. Makes sense. We're in this sort of boreal area. Those places tend to have a whole bunch of lakes because it's in a low pressure belt. Low pressure belt. Lots of precipitation. Primarily, no. This is why you should learn weather, kids. It's good for D&D. All the weird stuff I learned for D&D. That would be one of them. Alright, so let's go. We got some swampies. Swampish. Okay, boreal forest. Swamp. 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 And then something else. Okay. Do our boreal forest and then 5 swamps. And then 11. 11 is hills? No. Can't remember. I've changed this 2d6 table a number of times. Sometimes hills and mountains are at the bottom, 2 and 3, and sometimes they're at the top, so depends on which version I'm looking at. It's always the same, like the structure is always the same as far as percentages, but I've done it both ways. Alright, so that's going to be hills or upland. Alright, so we're going to have some hillies. So I think that makes sense to make the forested hills. Everything's wet around here, so nice forested hill right there. Now in this middle one, we already know what's in there. So definitive, the way that I do it is because the primary hex, the above hex was that, means at the lowest level, the central hex is also that. Just helps to keep things straight too. Oh. That's just gonna be water. That's a wetland. Since we have a bunch of swamp, I'm probably gonna make this a marsh. We've got some water and then a marsh. Water. And we're gonna do a marsh. It could be something else too. Because there are technically 4 types of wetland. There are bogs, fens, marshes, swamps. They're all wetland, but whether they're alkaline or acidic or how water gets into them is different. Determines what type they are. So this will probably be a fen. I assume so. I assume the river will end up probably moving through this hex. Probably. Maybe not. But it's probably going to be a fen. And we rolled a hill. Don't let me forget. Yeah, we rolled a hill. So I got to come back and do the hill. We'll go ahead and roll the river off of that one. That'll be nice and fun. Now we're going to be doing it blind. So when I go back in and add stuff later, we might end up with something weird like the water's going up into a hill. And if that's the case, then we'll just say that it cuts through in like a canyon. So it will be somewhat confusing to look at. So I'll have to make a notation on that text when I come there. Be like, oh, there's a gorge or a canyon here. Easy enough to do, though. Roll 'em! Mountain. D10. Not a 10. Okay. So we have a mountain. I think at this point we'll just do forested mountain because we're not in the mountainous area. Okay, there he is. So we'll probably have some rivers or waterways that come off of this as well. Nice. Love to see it. Right. Alright, 3 swamps and then nice thick forest. 1, 3. And nice down here. Roll. Swamp. 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 Swamp, and then so 4 swamps, then water. Got him. 1, 4. Water. Now the way it works with like verdant versus being more dry, which means like if we were filling in a desert hex, it's going to be incredibly unlikely that we're going to end up with a lot of waterways. But if you roll a 2, you can always come up with some sort of lake there. But it's probably going to be like a super salty lake, especially if there's not a river feeding into it. So it's a Enderic, is that right? Endorheic basin, which is where water collects and there's no outflow. So that's things like salt lakes and dead seas and places like that. So the salinity is really high, so nothing really lives there. But it's super easy water to float on because it's salty. It's salty because that all the minerals, all the sediment that gets like eroded down into that has no place to go. And when things get too salty, things can't live there. 1. And that's just straight up water, right? 1 swamp. Go ahead and throw first. Collected water. Bomb. Alright, we got one more. That's it. Nice and easy. Yo. 4. Would technically be 2 more verdant. Can't get any wetter than water. Shall be water. Nice. So we have Green Lake, but we also have, it seems like, quite a bit of water down here. So we might actually have this whole other section of this whole north section of maybe Green Lake. So if we look at, who knows, we have, this is a larger scale, by the way. So these are 10 nautical miles across. These guys are 2 nautical miles across. So, you know, there's 5 across. So each of these would be the 10. These slightly larger hexes would be the 10 nautical miles. And then this big boy over here is the 60 nautical mile one, which would be our region size. These are our country size down here. So, Gronish Laka, which is Green Lake. It's a big lake. As you can see, it's pretty far across. We know each one of these is 10, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 60 nautical miles across, which is a little bit longer than our statute miles or normal miles, imperial miles, whatever you want to call it. But slightly longer. If you don't know why I use nautical miles, it's because nautical miles go directly into longitude and latitude. It's an approximation, so it makes it very easy to map from like a world scale all the way down to these nautical mile league hexes, where you can about an hour of travel by foot. It allows to hex map scale incredibly easily without having to do a lot of weird math. Why I made the system like this. Okay, we also have some stuff that's up here. You know that there's going to be a treasure rumor and a conflict area up here. These are celestials. Grab this information, and we're going to translate that as well. So that's going to be somewhere up here. Doesn't really matter where. We can just kind of pick a place. Okay. If you've got no idea, just drop it in the middle, baby. No reason not to. Drop these right into the middle of the hex. So, technically we could fill out all these hexes, because now we know what they are. For their biomes, because that's whatever the center of this is. We made that the primary biome. But we can go ahead and drop that in there. And we can grab this hex, and we can open ours. And what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to make sure that this is APL 5 through 10. This is going to be a treasure room. That makes me know that it's actually the next level up. Because once we're going to start adding a whole bunch of points of interest here. Once we start exploring this map. And most of those are going to be in that first tier of adventure, because these are like league hexes. So made for parties of level 1 through 4 as far as D&D is concerned. But this one's a higher level one. So if they stumble across it, they can go check it out if they're like 3rd or 4th level. But depending on what it is, it might absolutely kick their butts. The world is not totally scaled to them, but the scale in which they interact with the world is scaled to them. Yes, that's correct. So the world is not scaled to them, but most of the things, the way in which the viewport they have at the world, like the magnification or zoom that they're looking at the world, most things are leveled for them. These are going to be the outliers that they come across, for the most part. And then we got our conflict area. So select this over here, copy these, and drop this to here. Done. Well, go 5 through 10. Remind me that that is and let's go ahead and put a little stamp down there. And grab this guy and we'll drop a little stamp in. Dun 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 dun. Right. Conflict area is this guy. Thing. You did not. Do the thing. Thing. There we go. All right. So. Ta-da! We have done. Now, what we can do is we can run around and add some. We can fill out our rivers if we want, or waterways. We're not really gonna know exactly where they're gonna crash into at this point. Probably in some of these wetlands that are into some of these lightful hexes of water. So this is probably like the north area of Green Lake. Like spur of it. And then we got some standalone stuff that's hanging out up here. One that's up here. We got some different stuff. Nice little places where we can have some underwater adventures. We can throw some sunken treasure down in there. We can do all sorts of fun stuff. Also means we can put some islands on there. Remember, each of these hexes is like 2 nautical miles wide. So wide enough that you can definitely have an island in there that wouldn't be representative by looking at the hex. The hex will look primarily like water, but it doesn't mean it's only water. In the same way, you can have something in the swamp and be like, it's mostly swamp, but that doesn't mean that you can't have a little hill that's in the middle of the swamp that you're going to throw a ruin on top of. But you can also just make it a sunken ruin too, if you want to. You can do whatever you want. That's the kind of game it is. Game of... Okay, doke. Let's do... I guess let's do the rivers. Be pretty straight. Well, let's go from the top down. Hills. There we go. Alright, so that's gonna be our first one. So here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna roll d6. Done. 1, 2, 3. And 6. Perfect. Alright. So we went 1, 2, 3. 1, a 2, a 3. At this point, we should probably go ahead and zoom in a little bit. Make life a little bit easier on both of us. Alright. So, the river's coming out of these hills. Go in this direction. Always flows downhill, unless it... So if you run into another hill, it's going to cut right through it. Or it's going to go underwater. It is water. Underground. Alright, and... I just use the 2d6 to just kind of determine which way it goes. Right. And then it's going to turn left. I try not to put them through these border hexes, which are the red hexes. They're in red right now because they are determined by the hexes that are around them. We could fill those out right now if we wanted to. Which, we got a little bit of time. That will take a while. And will be relatively uninteresting to watch, honestly. Certainly less interesting than even the river stuff. Questionably interesting. Alright, gonna turn right. Then gonna turn right again. Gonna turn a big right. Alright, so we were going this way, so that would be straight. So we're going to right. Big right would be back this way. Now if we have something that allows us to turn right again, well, rivers don't circle on themselves. So we have to go the other way. We're good, right? Probably go the other way. All right, happened right there. We're gonna turn left instead. Straight, left. This gives us that nice, like, natural, lazy river curve to it. Very, very easily. Great. And then it's going to turn right again. Great. Then would turn right. Closest it can turn right to is there. Now, we're at an important junction. We can't go this way, because if we go this way, there's no place for us to go. Like I said, I try not to push them through the red areas. Technically, we can. Technically, we can. Yeah, I guess there's not really a good reason not to when we're at this scale. Usually I try not to with the large hexes, but we're at the leak hex. Not that big of a deal. Really more that I don't want to put a point of interest that's kind of in between hexes. But the river should be okay. So we're okay for right. Gonna make the executive choice. Alright, we're gonna turn right. Means we're gonna have to turn left. We went right. You have to turn left. So as you can see, it can make these weird curlicues. Which might seem like those rivers run really close together, but remember that these are like miles apart from each other. Just circling back on itself. Means there's some sort of spit of highland there that it goes around. Water always takes the easy route. Great. Then we're going to turn left. Here. Great. Left. So some of this I'll probably end up going back in and changing around because generally at some point there's gonna be like a water hex that's probably gonna pop up in here. Water hexes are pretty common in swamp biomes. So I'll just delete the little bit of the river, add the water in, so that way it'll look a little bit like not a good example. Not really. Well, yeah. There you go. So you see how these rivers come down and then they hit this hex and then continues that way. So there's the outflow. Then goes down into Green Lake and then the outflow from Green Lake is right here. We also know that there's another river that's coming in here. So this is where our two rivers are coming into. Notated. But probably now looking at this, these will probably just be lakes. All be one part of the lake. So this guy over here, which I didn't think was going to feed into Green Lake, is probably going to feed into Green Lake as Green Lake continues up into this area. Makes sense that it has so many inputs. It's a big ass lake. All right, keep going. Okay, so we're gonna make a hard left if we can. We'll push us back that way. Then a hard right. And another right if we can do that, which I don't think we can. So, one, two, this would be a hard right. Two, I guess right again to here. Going that way. The important thing to note when you're doing this is when we'll start adding lakes to this as we discover more and more, is that lakes generally only have one outflow. They have tons of inflows, like lots of streams can come into a lake, but traditionally only have one outflow. So only one water, like river or something, will be actually pulling water out. So it might look super squiggly now, but as we go back in and find, and I start filling in lakes, I'll actually probably have to go back and remove parts of the rivers. But the rivers are important to know because we might need to actually cross them. And it'll be a turn right. Great. And turn right. I don't want to go necessarily right here, so I'm gonna take a decision to go this way. Continue still. We did a big old squiggle, and that's fine. Like I said, we'll probably end up losing quite a bit of this at some point. I'll eat it all up. Right, left. Got some weird squiggles and turns around. And that might seem like that's unnatural for a river. You should go look at maps of rivers. They make all sorts of weird shapes. They very rarely go in a single direction. Great. Great. And of course, if we ever hit the bounds here, we're gonna have to call it. We're not gonna keep making new hexes. 3, okay. Get hard right. And then straight. Right. Straight and then hard right. Jumps back this way. All over the place, this river. That would be a hard right again. Probably not going to do that. The left. The right again would be right back. I mean, that would just be a right. Right, and then a left. Great. Great. Like right. Right. So it's moseying all over this place, as they are wont to do. Okay. Would be a slight right, but I think I'm gonna make a decision and let it make left. Do more so that way we're not doing a full circle. Wanted to quite do that. And as I said, we're gonna probably end up scuttling probably gonna end up with quite a few rivers. I probably should have started with the mountain river, but that's right. Right again. Great. Okay. Right. Decision to curve us away. So, a very funky monkey in river. Very, very funky. It's even getting funky for me. Right, right, right. Put us back that way, so I'm gonna do say left, then left again. Just to kind of keep us around. Right. 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 And we'll keep here. Left. Left. Right. Left. Left. Right. We're gonna wind around this whole freaking place. Well, I thought we'd get multiple rivers done, but we might only get this one river done. Been really. Again, usually I put down the rivers last, but since we're doing this as we play, I need to know when we'll actually need to cross some rivers. So, a little bit earlier than I would normally do them. But the nice thing is that we've encircled this whole place, so it's unlikely that we're going to get a lot of other waterways that are going to come out of this hex. there's a chance for multiple rivers to kind of come out of one high elevation area. Hard right. One, two, three. Marching towards the edge of the map. Great. And a hard right and left. Left. Great. Great. Right, which is probably going. You know what? I'll take it. I'm just gonna end the river right there, as I can imagine that we will probably have some sort of other outflow. Same thing is, you don't really need to do that many outflows when you have a swamp, because the swamp is an overly saturated area of water, land overly saturated with water, and because of that, it's kind of an overflow often from things like a river or a lake. Don't necessarily have to put an output, because the output will be somewhere. Yeah. This thing is so encircled, I don't think it even makes sense to try to see if there's another one out of this. It just makes zero sense to do that. Alright, well let's do this one. And hopefully we'll have a shorter one. We're pretty close to the edge here, so ideally we go that way. Took a left and that way. 2, 3, 4. Okay. 4 in the room. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4. And then we're gonna immediately hook a right. We might be going immediately off map, which would be great. Right. Left. Right. A left. A left. And we're basically off the map. Boy. Go ahead and a little bit though. And straight. That takes us fully off the map. Alright, well that one was easy. usually not quite that easy. But that's only one that's out of here. So rivers can have, or mountains areas, or highland areas, whether those are hills or mountains or whatever, can have multiple sources of multiple waterways. We can go ahead and do that. All right, so let's roll again and see if we get something else. So basically we go until we get doubles, or it doesn't really make sense to put stuff down there. Hey, we immediately got a double. So there's no other sources there. That's the one river that's coming out of there. And it's probably over here. Probably not a river. Probably going to be. Let me pull up the document. This is a newer addition to the document. It has not yet been totally memorized by me, just out of rote usage. You know what? I think it's in that same document. I think I was just dumb. I think I just closed that document when closed the exact document I needed. Oh, no. Up. Here we go. All right, perfect. I need the river classification portion of this document. Yes, I am that nerdy. Thank you for asking. Here we go. So our classifications: rills, brooks, creeks, streams, rivers, grand rivers, and other rivers. Just helpful to know for me, like, what kind of watercraft can navigate this area. Can people ford it? Do they need a bridge? Do they have to use a ferry? Can ships go on it? kind of how wide it is and how deep. So, and then how that maps onto our scale of hexes. So Atlas would be the very, very top. We're actually down here at the very, very bottom. So we're going to have rills for the most part. So those are going to be rills coming off. And rills, as you see up here, are not very wide. They're like step across. Less than 6 inches deep, so some centimeters. Not very deep at all. Pretty easy. You can basically just hop across them. We are rills. Add those in. Here. Down to the put it down that it's a rill, and we'll put it down here. Selected. Still had the wrong thing. There we go. I had the wrong tool selected. This is also a rill. By the way, if you want to use this program, it's a web app. It's called XTML, HEXTML .playest, not playtest, PLAYEST .net. And you can make your own. What I really like about the program is that it's free, which is I love. It also allows you to make local saves, so you can save this map and then open it back up later in any other browser, on any computer, and keep working on it. Also saves like all your notes and stuff in it. There you can cross migrate, like you can map it to other maps, which is not really something I've used enough. It allows you to make notes. You drop the little stamps on it, which I use for my points of interest. It allows you to put your biomes down. Lots of fun stuff. As well as make text that anybody can see who's looking at it, as well as this secret text. So if you want to share this with people while you're playing, you can do that, and they can, who are the dungeon master or game master, you will be the only person who gets the secret note. But then you can do things like our other map, where I have labeled things that you can read, and they will be able to access that information and whatever information box. It's a fun program. Check it out. Alright, so those are our rills. There are courses of rivers. There are the headwaters, which is what we just did. We're going to do the basically up through the upper course, essentially. So this is all the headwaters is just where it starts, like the spring. The upper course, which is what we did, which are the rills. Then we're going to go to brooks and creeks. And the lowest course will be streams. So it kind of gives you the ability to divide things up pretty easily. They run roughly equidistant, so it's pretty easy to... It is a little bit of an art more than a science. We'll go brooks and creeks, and then streams. Streams. Man, cannot talk. Alright, so we know that our stream's going to be down here. So if we wanted to look about like what a third looks like, in the, like, we might say, how many does this go? 1. So we might go here. You know what, let's start like maybe like here. Again, more of an art than a science. So we'll just write down, hey, this is where it turns into a... I'm writing these as notes for myself so I know how I will need to cross it. Should the characters come across it. We're only using all parts because this one ended up being really, really long. We will not use all those parts on the one that's coming off the mountain. And again, I fully expect that I will lose a lot of this river as I start filling things in. things will not make sense. That's easy to just go back and move. Change or whatever. So previously, the way that I usually do this is that usually I would have, if I was just world building to make a map as like a game master and not something that I'm trying to experience while and build it while I'm playing it, is I would do all the biomes first. And then I would do the points of interest, generally. Because if I do the points of interest, it will tell me, I'll know which places where crossings are. So if I move a river into sort of like this, say there was a, say that, yeah, let's say this. Say this was a crossing, which might be a ferry or a bridge or a ford or something like that. And I knew a river was going to come into, or waterway was going to come into this hex. I would try to do my best to make it run through that spot. So that way it would be a very natural, oh, there's a ferry here, or ford, or whatever made sense for the classification of waterway it was. I believe next. All right, so from here to about there, so to feels pretty good, I guess. Other ways that I will do it is that if a supplementary or an additional waterway interjects into it, that will force the classification size up. Really just putting it in because too many. It's a bit of a crick. Where you are in the US, say that different. Call it the guys in. And then I typically name them waterways based off the classification of where they are when they terminate, not where they start, or else everything would just be called a rill. Usually by what size they are when they finish. So if we didn't make it all the way to stream, this would be called such and such creek, such brook, or such and such rill, such. Perfect. So everything right here is going to be. And I think probably for the other one, for the upper course, which is when it's still in sort of higher elevation areas, it will be a rill, which we've already known. Certainly taken me longer than I expected, which is the way. That's okay. I tend to find this sort of work somewhat meditative or relaxing. So real. So I think it makes sense for everything watercourse that we know be the brook. Since we don't know how far it actually. And as such, we might name it brook, which is fine. There is no actual ordered classification about how waterways are named. There is no one classification for waterway. I had to make my own. There wasn't one I could go to and grab. There are a few different ones, but there is no standardization. The same thing happens with hills and mountains. There is no standardization about what is a hill and what is a mountain as far as like their elevation. I usually use the kind of rough approximation that a hill is about 2,000 feet at its max, and everything above 2,000 feet is generally a mountain. But there are definitely many, many mountains in the world that are under 2,000 feet, and many, many hills in the world that are taller than 2,000 feet. So it is an estimation. All right. Well, that's that. So like I said, I could go back in and fill out all these little border hexes. Maybe I'll do that. Maybe we can do that as a stream. It's a very boring stream. We'll probably have to figure out some questions or some topics to talk about while we do that, because otherwise it's just, you can watch me roll a die and be like, oh, that's a forest this time, or oh, that's gonna be a swamp this time. Mostly gonna be swamp. Mostly gonna be swamps, guys. But that's a good place to end this one. Thanks for hanging out with me, guys. This is always fun. Love streaming. And a chance to talk with you and nerd out a little bit about D&D. That's always an enjoyable time in my book. So hopefully you enjoyed this. You had fun. If so, appreciate the likes, comments down, any sort of engagement, that sort of fun. If you actually participated in Free RPG Day, or missed it, and you check out the website later, tell me about which things that you liked the most, or things that you thought were the most interesting about it, or things that you wanted to grab. And remember that you can still probably get that free PDF of it online somewhere. You might have to dig for it a little. But about it. Thanks for hanging out with me, guys. I'll see you guys real soon. All right. Bye.